Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Um, I'm not somebody that follows, murder stories, uh, even news. Some things, uh, like the horrific, shooting at the school where the police stood by. The place was filled with police, and they stood by for, I think, several hours right outside the doors. The police had all these weapons, and the killer was killing kids, and the kids inside, some of them, little kids, grade school. Some of the kids were calling on the phone, 911, and coming. So I do follow some stories. Some things you're absolutely horrified by. Just the other day, I found this story on YouTube, and one of the things, I started watching it, and I didn't know that it was a documentary made by 60 Minutes in Australia, and it's about let's just jump over there, JonBenét Ramsey, a girl who was, 4 years old or something like that. So anyway, I watched this thing, and then at the end of it, it showed that it was made in Australia. I was kind of surprised, but I was, really surprised that I haven't heard anything about this. And the information that this documentary gives. Well, one, that the police department had to be so unbelievably stupid, incompetent. It just positively. So if that, if you followed that, let's see, let me look below. I don't want to play somebody else, I'll give a link to it, Okay, this has had almost 2 million views. Well, it was done in, so February 18th of 2024. The child beauty queen, JonBenét Ramsey, is one of the most enduring cold cases in history, but new evidence ignored by police during the initial investigation may crack the mystery wide open. And let me jump down here to, there is a simple rule every detective learns early in their policing career: follow the evidence. But it's a principle that appears to have been forgotten when child beauty queen JonBenét was found strangled in the basement of her family home. Her murder 27 years ago remains unsolved. A substantial reason is that the police investigating her death were convinced that JonBenét's parents were the perpetrators. Other suspects, along with crucial evidence, was ignored. And it goes on. So I remember watching this, and I don't normally do that, watching this unfold. And, the police department, thought that the father was guilty, and then they thought that the mother was guilty. A lot of people thought that the young boy, her brother, was responsible, but none of those. It's just unbelievable. You got to watch this, especially if you followed it. The mother died 4 years later, and I think a lot of people thought that she did it, and so she lost her child, but now the U.S. version of this, when it happened, there were, accusations made or information put out and whatever that, and that's interesting that stuff, like the kidnapping note that was supposedly found, and the police in Colorado or whatever, suspected that it was in her handwriting and all kinds of stuff. That stuff's not even mentioned in the report from Australia. But yeah, wow. So I'm going to put the link below to that if you followed it. Maybe if you didn't follow the story, maybe don't even watch it, because I think it makes it even more, tragic in a way. I mean, so, but anyway. Maybe I can play maybe I can play 1 minute of it without upsetting somebody. Let's go back. I'll just do about a minute of it. Oh, okay, that worked out well. Give you a little lead in there. Wow. Now, I'm not. Maybe I should just stay off of this and just let you check it out if you want to check it out, and if you don't want to check it out, not check it out. Where instead of me giving you information like, I was a reserve police, I was a hospital security officer for 30 years, and at the hospital I worked at, there was a security officer shot and permanently disabled, and about a year or so later, there was a John Gilligas shot in the parking lot at the same time. And then there were other things that, I suspected and I wondered about that weren't being handled properly. And I was a reserve police officer for, a real small town that I was a reserve police officer for, 9 years or something like that. And for about 5, years, I patrolled every Sunday night, and I was the only one that, after a while, after like 4 years or something like that, finally, they started hiring officers, and then they hired somebody. The first one they hired was, for the midnight shift, and then I stayed over. But for when I came on duty, and I never missed a day in 5 or 6 years, whatever it was, of patrolling, and it was a small police department, and some of the reserve officers were fantastic, really good. And then there were, I'm trying to think of there was one guy who was a reserve officer, and he gave a ticket to anything that moved, and I gave very few tickets, but there were some things, like when they started getting their own officers, because they couldn't pay much, an embarrassing thing is, after, 5 years or something like that, I was grandfathered in. I didn't have to go to the police academy, because I'd already had a lot of, training and stuff. But it was offered to me, did I want to go to the police academy? I said, sure, send me. And so I went through it. Oh, okay, so there were 4 of us going through it. One of the guys was kind of strange, and he was new, brand new, You know, he had, in order to get X number of hours, or he had to ride with one of, you know, and he rode with me one time, and I told the chief, I said, I'm not going to let him ride with me, you know. And the chief said, is something wrong? I said, no. On the first day that we went to the police academy, and the police academy was for Kansas City, Missouri police officers and others, small departments, real small departments, stuff like that. So on the first day of the academy, maybe it was the second day, because they knew it. I mean, I think it was the first day. That was the first day, yeah. When I arrived, the other three, or would it be other two, and I said, Jim, so-and-so's not going to be here. I said, oh. And he said, you know, the officer said he was arrested. I said, arrested? Yeah. He went to, it wasn't a Walmart, it was something like that, a big, I forget the name of it. And he went in, went back and stole I think it was boots, I think. And the manager, it's my understanding, it was the manager, you know, I'm not sure if that store, it was a big store. I knew a guy who worked there for Pinkerton, a contract guard, and they had him at the front door, standing inside the front door. That's what his job was. Just be there, you know. And, you know, he had trouble getting loose to be able to go, you know, take a piss or whatever. Anyway, this to-be reserve officer went in there, stole the boots, went outside, and the manager went out after him, and he pulled away from, I think he might have pushed this guy too, you know, and took off running. Ran across 71 highway into some wooded area, and this was in Kansas City, Missouri, you know, not Raymore and not Grandview. It was in Kansas City, Missouri. And they put the helicopter up and they caught him. They had just passed a new law that if you, in Missouri, if you had a firearm and you did something, a crime, I forget what it was, it became much, much more serious. I mean, even if you didn't pull the gun, and this guy pulled the gun out, you know, I guess he pulled the gun out and said, you know, get back, and then took off running. And so, I mean, you have situations like that, you know, sure, well, of course, in this Australia, you know, that community there, it wasn't like Raymore or some small community, but still, man, they fucked it up, unbelievable. Okay, I'm talking more about what did I want to mention? Why did I want to mention it? There was a reason. I can't. Oh, the fact that actually thinking back on the reserve officers. Well, he never made officer. You know, he never even made officer. But yeah, there was some of when they started hiring in their own officers, and they couldn't pay very much. Small community. That's why they had reserve officers. We didn't, you know, take any money. Now I was paid. Well, we all were paid. If you like for the day shift, there's times they call me in because the chief they had a chief of police finally, and I was called in. And when they called me in special, you know, for that, they went ahead and paid me for the hours, you know, what an officer would be paid. But there was some stuff that I saw that, you know, the reserve officers weren't doing any part of that, and it was totally inappropriate. I mean, it wasn't criminal, not really a criminal, but it was stuff that should not have happened. Kind of stupidity, you know. like I went in, once they finally started, I guess I'm telling it, I went into patrol, and we only had 3 or 4 cars, and there was so many years that the cars that we had were, just not, you didn't think of them as police. They were police cars. They were actually police cars, but police cars that had been by some department, Kansas City or something, and had been well used, and then we got them, and they just weren't. And I almost, we finally got some good cars after several years, of having cars that just weren't up to. And I stayed over because we only had, I think, a midnight full-time officer. And he came on a suspicious vehicle, and that it took off running from him. And, he turned on his, and that was like 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. I could have gone home at any time. I mean, but I worked for years, by myself. But when we got a full-time officer, I felt compelled to stay over as long as I could, so he'd have somebody. So anyway, the car chase is coming towards me, and I fall at, there's another thing that came up I might mention. Strange world we live in. Car is coming towards me, and I didn't have time and the officer told me when I called, I said, I'm at, whatever it was, and he says, well, you won't have time to make it. And sure enough, I didn't. They were coming. And so I was sort of heading towards the car, that was coming at me, but I moved over because I don't think he was going to stop. And so then I turned around, and, I'm off following the 2 suspects and the new full-time officer, and I was right behind him. At that point, I was working, full-time midnight shift security at a hospital that was right there on the corner, small hospital, a research Belton hospital. And so then there's a down ramp going on to the highway, and I could already see down there, Grandview police lights coming, because they were this was in Belton, at this point. And I could see the lights coming, Anyway, so I turn on the ramp, and then I'm going, but then I saw my speedometer, and I forget now what it was. It was way fucking high. And somehow I did not lose control of the vehicle. It's amazing. And one reason why we finally got a car that had some power. That was a real police car. I looked over, and there was the hospital that I worked at, that had security only at night, small hospital. I looked over and I saw the hospital. Then I saw one of the local police officers, a Belton police officer. I could see him trying to, going to pull out of onto the little outer road there, and I saw him. He saw it was too late, and so he just, I don't know if he went back to the hospital or if he just started whatever. As a excuse me. Anyway, I got on 71 highway, but as soon as I got on it, the Grandview PD, now you don't set up, roadblocks, I mean, unless you're, I don't know, you're not going to set up a roadblock for somebody. Anyway, these guys have been breaking into houses at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and stealing guns. It's a wonder they survived. I mean, if somebody had, but so I just went on and down the highway a little bit. When I came to, I called on the radio that I was going to be returning, because I'd be the only officer on duty, returning to Raymore. Many years later, oh, by the way, okay, so two guys. One of the guys got away. But many years later, I'm working at this hospital, the same hospital. And there's a guy there who's a real nice, young, let's see, was he, I think he was respiratory therapy, I think. Real nice. And then he was out there and he says, Jim, do you know many of the Belton police officers? I said, yeah, I pretty much know them all. They come in, I see them. And then he told me, he said, well, back X number of years ago, he says, I was young and stupid, and he said, and this guy talked me going in the car with him and going to steal some stuff. And he said, we did, and then the police were after us, and so anyway, he told me, that he got away, the other guy got, caught. And I said, do you remember when there was a police car coming towards you, over? Yeah, I remember that. He said, the guy told me, he says, shoot him. Talking about me. Shoot him. And he says, I told him, no, we're not shooting anybody, And then the guy said, no, shoot him, or something like that. And then he said, I said, well, my gun was empty or whatever, because I guess they stole a bunch of guns. And the guy gave him, said, here's my gun. And then he said that he took the gun and threw it out the window. And which I didn't know any of this. I didn't know if a gun had been found, the next day, or if somebody just found a gun and put it in their pocket. And no, I did not, no, I didn't turn this guy in or anything else. He was, in my opinion, had, been a stupid young guy and turned his life around. And so I didn't turn him in. But small world. I guess. Anyway, it looks like, because I'm getting some comments, that using Bandicam is working okay. I still feel like the volume is not as loud as it should be, but nobody's complained. By the way, it's almost 8 a.m. in the morning here. I've been up. I just lay down for a little bit. Or did I? I'm not sure I did. I got stuff on my bed again because I was moving stuff around. Oh, yeah. I've got a bunch of doctor's appointments coming up. I'm not going to say I lied to the doctor, but maybe I wasn't totally honest. I haven't been taking the medicines nearly as well as I should, for my problems that I have. But I didn't exactly lie to my doctor. I just wasn't maybe fully honest, and I have not been taking my medicines the way that I should. Sometimes, let's see if this is naproxen. Anyway, what I did is, I'm not going to try to move the camera either. Eventually I'll get. But the refrigerator over there, I took the safe that was on top of it and moved it over here. And I took my dispenser that I've got, that I've shown you, if you watched years back, that have an individual for each day, morning and night or whatever. And I put that now. I've tried different things. Like one thing I always do is, have something that I think I really need to take. This is naproxen. This is for the pain that I have in this shoulder and this shoulder. And now the pain in my, which people think is carpal tunnel or something. I don't think it is, because started out here and now it's over here, and I don't use this hand for, you know, I use it for drinking Coke. And so it's something else. But you know, putting it there. But I think this other is going to work. Well, now it's going to work because I've got a real irregular heartbeat now, which I won't go into details. I had a irregular heartbeat a couple times in the past where that was, I call it skipping. I would have a heartbeat, you know, a regular one, and then I would have, you know, a regular one, and then I would have, well, I'd have a regular one, and then a little beep, and then my system would think that I had had a full heartbeat, so it skipped doing the beat. Our body's pretty, you know, and after a while that causes problems with your, not, you know, life-threatening problems, but the heart muscles or whatever. You know, you know, there's something wrong here. This, you know, this old man is, you know, and so it starts to hurt. And so my wife had left me. I'd come home from after being married for 6 years. I came home and I came home and came in. Furniture was gone. A whole bunch of stuff was gone. What? And I wasn't. I had never had anything stolen from me. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe it. Somebody, and the ex-wife was supposed to be in the hospital, but she wasn't. She left early. So I won't go into detail on that. But so, you know, I went and looked in the closet. You know, I pulled the side of the door. You know, I didn't look for my stuff. You know, her stuff was gone too. And then it was like, they took the kids' toys. What, you know? Anyway, and I'm thinking, you know, I've never had anybody steal anything from me. And I wasn't mad or anything like that. I thought, this doesn't make sense. Why did they take this and this? And then it hit me. Wait a minute. And then I went into the bedroom or whatever and pulled my side of the closet open, and there were my uniforms and stuff. Basically, that's, you know, there it was, and then I knew, you know. But I was heading someplace with that. Oh, something I want to say is Darlene and I, well, she was 18, I was 26. We got married 6 years after we got married. She had some breathing difficulty. The doctor gave her an injection of a cortisone type, and I guess there's different types of. I became an expert on cortisone, by the way. They gave her, the doctor, oh, that's too when she had some breathing trouble. She had breathing trouble then. She had, you know, and that's back when it came out that do not use these inhalers more than once or twice a day, and she was using them more than twice a day, a big time more. She went to the doctor's office for you know, breathing difficulty. Well, because the doctor there at the clinic, she went for a pap smear, and the doctor walked in and she was starting to use her inhaler, and he says, how often do you use that? She said, about 3 times a day, you know. She was using it more than 3 times a day, and he said, no, you're not, and he took it away from her. And then she had an attack. And he gave her a cortisone, a massive amount of cortisone. I looked that up, when she went into the hospital. Then they called me. She was with her mother. And they called me, and I came, and then I drove her. And when I was driving her to the hospital, she was a direct admit. When I was driving her, she wasn't talking very much and seemed strange and odd. But I thought, well, she just had a breathing attack that, scared her or whatever. So anyway, a few days after immediately when I went the next day or whatever, the nurses told me, your wife doesn't want to see you. And so for a while, I was telling people, you're not well. When her lawyer called, I told him, I said, he said, well, I forget, people have, and I said, well, you're not going to believe this, but we've been married for 6 years, and we have never had any type of a disagreement, ever. And that's just a phrase that I used quite often because it was the truth. But then I realized, okay, wait a minute, if somebody, is married for any length of time and they don't have a disagreement of some sort, there's the problem, And the problem was both my parents were alcoholics. I had to stand between them a few times, and she had a bad situation with, her parents. And so, that was the problem. But anyway, so she filed for divorce, right away. And so I started, what's going on? And then I looked at the medicine that she was taking, and it said, it's a cortisone, and it contraindicated in people who have the following problems. And then it gave the symptoms, all the symptoms that she had. And then I asked, because I was working hospital security, I asked a couple of doctors, if somebody was to take, and it says it's counterindicated or whatever. And I think both of the doctors said, well, what's going to have to, like they said, oh, wow, that amount they gave her? Wow. And said, she's not going to change until she comes off of that, off the cortisone. And sure enough, I was telling her, eventually she let me know where the kids were and even come over with pizza, stuff, but she still didn't want anything to do with me. And then I told her, Darlene, it's this medicine here. No, it's not. I said, okay. And so what I told my lawyer was, if she wants a divorce, if that's what she wants, let her have the divorce. All I ask is that you stretch it out as far as you legally can. If you have, I don't know whatever it has, if you have a month to file something, file it on the last day. If there's another thing you can do, to stretch it out until such and such. And then sure enough, after such and such amount of time went by, we got back together, unfortunately. Do you ever see the TV show Married with Children? I joke about that. Anyway, I got really sidetracked, and on this subject too. Why do I do that? I'm going to try not to do that, but I got sidetracked. Anyway, you need a 34-minute. You need 34 minutes so you can laugh at me. How stupid I was in a number of ways. Anyway, Darlene came back, And 6 years later, she wanted a divorce, so it looked like she was on. I think it was a thing with Marilyn Monroe. What was it? Something. And the part of the story was a certain amount of time went by or something or other. Anyway, thanks for watching. Oh, I'll put that link below for this documentary. Thanks very much for watching.